So we'll now have a brief question period of about 5 minutes. We'll first entertain questions for Dr. Olson, so I'll ask her to come to the podium. Asha and I will read those questions, and then we'll proceed with questions for Dr. Sambrano.
Hi, Pat. Our first question is regarding CIRM funding of out-of-state collaborations. Does CIRM ever review a preliminary application and invite the company to submit a full application? Oh, I apologize. Our product is focused on assessing the viability of human embryos to improve the rate of implantation in assisted reproductive treatment. We may need to work with IVF clinics outside of California to gain access to needed resources. Will we be able to use CIRM funds to reimburse out-of-state IVF clinics for consulting services associated with human embryo donation?
CIRM has a policy that for out-of-state consultants or subcontractors, up to $15,000 may be paid in any 1 year to any one subcontractor or consultant, and with a maximum of up to $25,000 to ex-California consultants or subcontractors. This is with justification. This is our standard policy. For very specialized services that may not be available in the state, that will require more justification and is usually a little bit trickier.
The next questions are specific to RFAs, or more specific to RFAs. All of the CIRM grants stress cell-based therapies. Will antibody therapeutic grant applications be reviewed on the same prioritization level as cell-based ones?
First, I would note that all CIRM RFAs do not stress cell-based therapy, although I would also remind the audience that in point of fact, when the proposition was written, that was a focus that for therapies derived from pluripotent or progenitor cells. This is really an RFA by RFA specific type function. I would just comment that our most recent disease team application had cell therapies, had antibody therapeutics, and had small molecule therapeutics. So awards were made in all of those categories. There are occasions, however, where our board asks that we emphasize certain priorities. So, for example, the early translational 2 RFA that has just been released, although it again is fairly broad in scope, there are certain priorities that are listed in that RFA. So I would encourage people to look at the RFA. If you think you have a scientifically competitive project, please go ahead and submit a pre-application. You know, these programmatic considerations come in regarding priorities at both, as Dr. Sambrano indicated, at both the grants working group recommendation level and at the board level on funding.
Okay, thank you. The first question is regarding the pre-application process. Does CIRM ever review a preliminary application and invite the company to submit a full application only if they make modifications to the scope?
Right. So generally speaking, I think as I was describing in the pre-application and full application process, we do not allow changes between the pre-application and the full application, because we use the pre-application process really to identify the scope and the overall competitiveness of a project. And so what we expect to see in the full application is essentially the same project as the pre-app.
The second question is, what if only one of 15 scientists on the grants working group board is a specialist, but we are competitors?
So that's a great question. Competitors, technically speaking, does not represent a conflict of interest under our policies. I recommend that everyone certainly look at the conflict of interest policy, which defines financial, personal, and professional. Certainly a competitor could fit under a long-standing difference with under a personal or professional conflict, but I think another way of basically assuring yourself that you are getting a fair review and having folks participate who are going to give you a fair review is to contact the review officer. And if there are long-standing differences or potential competitors who you have concerns about, we will take those into consideration prior to the review. So I think the key there is to communicate with CIRM and let us know what your concerns are.
Thank you. We will field more questions at the end of the session.